The principles of body position have been fairly constant since riders started hanging off the bikes decades ago, but something is changing. Because of the advancements in aerodynamic technology, riders are now being forced to approach body position in a different way. But before we get to what they're actually doing, first we need to take a quick look at how we got to this point. And that starts with why aero was brought in to begin with in modern times. Now, we're not going to be doing a deep dive on MotoGP aero here, so this is the abridged version, but basically aero was initially brought into MotoGP largely to do one thing: to stop the bike wheeling so that they could use more of the bike's power. And on top of that, with the switch to the Michelin tyres in 2016, and with it the introduction of their front tyre that was significantly worse than the previous Bridgestone front tyre, manufacturers were looking for ways to improve the grip situation at the front end during braking and in the entry phase of corners. This initially came into play in the form of big wings on the front of the bike, and it worked, but it did come with some drawbacks. Firstly, with the extra downforce at the front of the bike, it created an imbalance which caused some weird tyre issues at both ends of it. And second, it made the bike more difficult to steer, and it actually hindered them in the middle of the corner where the bike had a tendency to understeer because of the imbalance that come from the extra downforce applied to the front end alone. In an attempt to address the balance, quite literally, we started to see more aero added across the whole bike in an attempt to create a more stable situation for the tyres and how the bike behaves through every area of the track. It was around this time that we started to see riders hanging off more and more. Not for the usual reasons that have been discussed for what must be over 40 years now, where moving to the inside of the bike reduces lean angle, but for how this is now affecting the aerodynamics and the role that plays in how the bike goes around the corner. To understand that, let's quickly talk about how the bike's aero features work in this phase. So like I said, the early versions of the front wings were largely brought in to help keep the front tyre on the ground so that the bike could use more of its power. As such, the wings were designed to be more parallel with the ground when the bike is upright for maximum downforce. The trouble with motorcycles, however, particularly MotoGP motorcycles that lean in excess of 60 degrees, is that these wings produce significant amounts of side force in the middle of the corner, meaning the bike's ability to hold the line and turn through it were negatively affected. To combat this, teams started to angle the wings so that they still provided downforce to the front end on the straights, while also providing more downforce and less side force in the middle of the corner. However, while this helped with the upper wing, what it meant was that the lower one actually created more side force than the previous versions, and this is when we started to see extra wings being added with different shapes to help combat this. Another solution they found, almost by accident according to some sources, is the part the rider plays in reducing that side force. And this is when you started to see more and more riders using extreme riding positions, but like I said, not for the reasons we've always known. As we've talked about many times on this channel, it's moving your body inside the center line of the bike that helps reduce lean angle, plain and simple. The more and further away you can move your body from the center line of the bike, the further the combined center of gravity moves to the inside, the less the bike needs to lean. This is why we see extreme positions like this at corner exit, particularly from taller riders. They're working hard to stand the bike up as much as possible in this phase so that they can use more of the bike's power and use it earlier. But with the advancement in aerodynamics, we now have another necessary outcome for body position: how that body position affects the aerodynamics. Getting back to it then, as we discussed, engineers are now looking to reduce the effectiveness of the wing on the inside of the bike at high lean angles in the middle of the corner, and it's the rider that helps them achieve that goal. At this point in time, the more the rider can position their body deep on the inside of the bike, almost laying down on the side of it, the better job they're going to do at disrupting the airflow on the inside, which brings with it a number of benefits. The first is what we've already discussed. The rider's body will reduce the effectiveness of the aero on the side of the bike and reduce the amount of side force that aero is applying to the front wheel mid-corner. What also happens is that by disrupting the airflow after the wing on the inside of the bike, it creates a resistance on that side, which helps the bike turn tighter around the corner, much like a very small amount of rear brake would. And finally, the last benefit of hanging off like this is that it creates a cleaner airflow to the rear aero package, which is there to achieve things like increased downforce and reduced side force to the rear of the bike. Now, if you're anything like me, then I'm sure you feel a bit mind blown at this point, and regardless of how you feel about aerodynamics in MotoGP as a whole, you've got to admit this is pretty cool. And what all this means is that while this style of riding isn't exactly new, what we are finding is that more and more riders are starting to adopt this style of riding out of necessity, to be sure they're getting the benefits of positively disrupting different parts of the overall aero package. And it does make me wonder what advancements we might see in the coming years in terms of how riders are using their bodies and what other features we might see on the riders themselves to see even more incremental gains in this area. So having said all this, what does it mean for you as a rider? Well, nothing really. For road riders, this isn't even a talking point because aerodynamics on the road is pointless, but even on the track with the latest and greatest superbikes coming with even more and more aero, I'd still say this shouldn't be a concern. The things we're talking about here are the most elite riders on the most elite machines trying to get every advantage they can. And even on the tricked out superbikes, the core benefits of good body position don't change. To create a stable position that allows you to ride how you want most comfortably, while giving the bike what it wants from a stability and lean angle perspective. So, not something you really need to concern yourself with quite yet. Check out this video on exactly how we use our bodies most effectively to reduce lean angle. Outside of that, thank you so much for watching this one, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.